I know you've heard the news. We have an upcoming public speaking class coming up May 2nd. And for the month of April, I'm going to be introducing you to some folks who have been actively and courageously using their voice. I can't wait for you to meet our special guest for today. I say this all the time. I was not born the woman who could command the room. I became her, and I became infatuated with the skills of communication. So it's not by design of how I was created. It was an intentional step that was taken. And so for the month of April, I'll be introducing you to some awesome people who have also been intentional about growing their voice, and they have some powerful stories. And our special guest for today is Davon Camp. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast today, Davon.
I am so excited to be here. And I want to first say, before we get started, I want to say how proud I am of you being able to use your voice and being able to inspire so many people. So I have watched you from afar, and you are so inspirational, but most importantly, you are motivational. And I know just watching you from afar has taken my public speaking, but not just that, the confidence that you pour out and that I have grasped. I want to tell you that's helped me so much.
Oh my goodness, thank you so much. Thank you. That's inspiring. And that's why we do and we share the information that we do for those who are watching, similar to Davon. Okay, so enough about me, Davon. Tell the world who you are and what it is that you do.
So my name is Davon Camp. I was born and raised in Washington D.C. I have a wife and I have 4 kids, and right now, currently, I'm in year 18 in the government. I started out as a student intern, and I worked my way up, and now I am currently a director of a organization, and I lead around 10 folks every day. And it was not easy to start out as an intern and ascend to the level I am now, but it has been an amazing journey being where I am now and working at the agency that I work at now.
Hmm. That is an incredible story. Once being able to say you have been somewhere planted for that length of time and how you ascended into leadership. Talk a little bit about your childhood. Were you always the confident person who was aspiring to leadership, using your voice? Talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely not. It was the total opposite. So I was diagnosed as a person who stutters at the age of 7 years old. So I would always wish that my stutter was like a bad headache, that I would fall asleep and I would wake up in the morning and my stutter would be just gone. But that didn't happen. So I grew up having so much self doubt. And the challenge is that it's not a lot of education out here. It was not a lot of education out here then, and it still is not a lot of education and awareness for people who stutter. So of course I went through childhood, and of course I would get teased. And I remember one thing, an example. I was in a second grade, and in class, our teacher said, "I want every student to stand up and say what you wanted to be when you grew up." When it was my turn, I stood up with the utmost confidence and said, "A lawyer." My classmates burst out and they laughed. One student said, "How can you be a lawyer and you don't talk straight?" And when I say, I sat down in my chair and I was so deflated, because as my 7 year old self, I said, what job would I be able to have where I have to communicate? Stuttering is communication in its core. And if you cannot effectively communicate, I told myself at 7 years old, I would not be able to accomplish anything. So, like I said in my intro, I defied the odds, obviously, because now I'm a director. But yeah, going through my childhood, I just dealt with so much self doubt and so much self confidence. So yeah, I had a pretty rough childhood. And again, stuttering was not discussed in the household because again, it's that's a subject that a whole lot of folks don't know how to approach. So I didn't go to speech therapy. So what I learned is I taught myself different strategies, and I became what I learned is a covert stutterer. So a person that's a covert stutterer is a person that tries to do everything they can to avoid stuttering. So I taught myself strategies to avoid stuttering, because again I didn't go to speech therapy as a child. But one thing I did was I got into sports. So I played basketball, and I really became pretty good. I played on AAU teams. I played in my high school team. I went and played Division II in college. So I really leaned into sports, because sports was my outlet to quote unquote cope with stuttering.
Well, we'll take that sports as an outlet out of all the other things that you could have taken. Talk to me a little bit about, when did you first become aware that you stuttered? Do you remember that moment?
I don't remember the exact moment, but I do remember as a child, I would struggle and I didn't know why. Because there was only one other person in my family that stuttered, and it was an elderly great grandparent. And I didn't have a whole lot of interaction with him. So that was the only reflection of a person that stuttered. So I will say around the time I was diagnosed, and that's when I went to actually get diagnosed and I learned what stuttering was. And I think that's when I really started to realize I was totally different than the other kids as far as it coming to communication.
Hmm. You were different in a powerful way, in a very
Yeah,
unique way that God would soon
absolutely.
use. And talk to us a little bit about, you mentioned there were some techniques that you started to apply even before you were diagnosed and had a chance to learn what these terms meant, like a speech therapist. What were some of those techniques that you used to assist you with stuttering?
So I knew, as a person who started, I knew it was certain sounds I struggled with, and I knew it was certain words I struggled with. So I learned to, what it is, being a covert stutterer, it's an avoidance technique, right? So I knew that to get through certain conversations, to get through certain situations, I should avoid certain words. So I didn't do more of what I do now. More now, I do more of open stuttering, because I have that acceptance piece. So now I can speak and speak freely. But as a child, and then coming up through high school, college, and early adulthood, I would do everything I could to avoid stuttering. But now that I'm so involved in the community of stuttering, I go to conferences, I speak. So now I try to stutter more openly and more freely, because there's no reason for me to be ashamed of it anymore. Because I went through my life being ashamed of it. Because
Hmm.
again, the challenge is first impressions, right? So the first time I opened my mouth as a child and then through early adulthood, I was embarrassed that the first impression would be, who is this nervous guy? Who is this guy who is unprepared? And again, and then who is this guy that lacks intelligence? Because a lot of folks associate stuttering with lack of intelligence, because sometimes you don't effectively communicate. So they think you're either not smart, or you're unprepared, or you're
Mm.
nervous, or you're anxious. So they put you in this pot where that's not the case. You just have a speech disorder. But again, it's the lack of education and the lack of awareness for stuttering.
Mm. You mentioned that, and I love this. You mentioned that now that you have an acceptance, you can openly speak without having to avoid words and phrases. I love that. It's liberating.
Absolutely, it
And
is.
I can't remember her name, but she has this quote: "When we allow our light to shine, we encourage others to allow theirs too." So, as you are being or have been liberated, you have been liberating others to just be who
Absolutely.
they are. Be who they are. Okay, 'cause man, so much I want to ask you. What advice would you give to someone who is like maybe who you used to be? Masking, avoiding, not quite stepping up into the full authority of who they are. What advice would you give to them as it relates to using their voice?
My advice would be, here's one thing I've learned. We as human beings, we have two voices that we hear. We hear a positive voice and we hear a negative voice. We as human beings have to learn how to turn down the volume on that negative voice and turn up the volume on that positive voice, right? As human beings, we are so hard on ourselves. And I use this illustration as an example, and it's so simple, but I think it's a powerful illustration. If you ask a kid, go in that drawer and give me that brush, The kid will go in that drawer, look in that drawer, and if they see 100 items in there, they're going to automatically come back and say, I don't see the brush. So that's the illustration for, as human beings, we psych ourselves out before we even attempt to accomplish things that we desire. So I wrote this book, and it's called Stuttering to the Top. And this is a book that goes into the mind of a person who stutters and the trauma that's associated with stuttering, but the breakthrough that's possible and the success that can be achieved. And in this book, I'm giving folks some principles and some tools to help them empower their positive voice, right? I know it's hard at times because it's easier for us to focus on the negative in our life. The negative in our life is so much easier. But I'm trying to show folks that if you empower that positive voice, if you learn how to love yourself unconditionally, because that's the challenge we have. A lot of human beings think we love ourselves fully and completely, but we learn certain things about ourselves. So in this book, I'm trying to teach folks to love yourself wholly and completely. So for me, I had to learn to love my stutter. I said, once I learned to love my stutter, lean into my stutter, embrace my stutter. When I tell you it took my confidence to the next level, I don't think it's anything I cannot achieve now, because my biggest hurdle was not just being a covert stutterer and avoiding certain words. I would avoid speaking. I would avoid speaking completely because I was so worried about how folks would perceive my stutter. But once I learned that my stutter and me speaking about my stutter and me being open about my stutter has inspired so many folks. So my book is called Stuttering to the Top. But I think this book can help anybody who has ever struggled with self-doubt and insecurity, because I'm trying to teach folks, be yourself. You would change, your life would change so much if you lean into whatever you're insecure
Mm,
about. So yeah,
mm,
I think that's so. I think it's that, like I said, that illustration of that kid going into that drawer and being overwhelmed and say, I can't find it. That's what we
mm,
do every day. We avoid going after what we
mm,
desire because we think we cannot achieve. And I tell folks, for me, it was not I lacked the knowledge, it was not I lacked the skills, and it was not I lacked the ability to do certain things. It was I lacked the confidence and I
mm,
lacked the self-love. Once I leaned into those things, it has been unbelievable the things I've been able to achieve. So I'm trying to teach folks, lean into it. Stop running away from it, because you will be surprised at what God has destined over your life if you allow Him and you follow His lead.
mm. Lean into it. Don't run from it. I love that you wrapped in that self-love piece. Just accepting who you are, loving every being, every fiber of that. You know,
Absolutely.
I had an insecurity as it relates to my voice too. I was actually, my dream was to be a journalist, but when I got to my college campus, I noticed that my voice didn't sound like the journalists on TV. It sound very urban. So
Hmm.
it took years to refine. What you hear today is not the way I used to speak, and very similar to you, it was an insecurity of mine.
Hmm.
And it was just something that I practiced and always practiced. And so I love that you talked about like just pushing through that, pushing through
Hmm.
that. Shout out to the book, Stuttering to the Top. How has that been? How has that been writing something like that? I'm sure you share some very personal things in the book, but the book experience and becoming an author related to this topic that you had to work through. Tell us a little bit about how you felt
That
about this
it
process.
was it was it was a it was amazing. Through my writing process, I laughed, I cried, but ultimately I rejoiced. So what inspired me to write my book was I have an 8-year-old son. He stutters. He was diagnosed as a person who stutters at the age of 7. Ironically, like I stated, I was diagnosed at the same age, and I took him to a stuttering event for kids, and I was asked to speak at this event. And after this event was over, it was folks lined up to just shake my hand. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for being transparent. I came home that same day and started to write. I didn't know I was writing a book. I came home to just journal, to get these thoughts out. After I started writing for a few days, I realized I might have a book on my hands. So I tell some very vulnerable stories, and since we're speaking about public speaking, I go into detail about the things I was doing to avoid public speaking to the detriment of my health. I didn't want to get up there to stand because again, talk about that positive voice and that negative voice. The negative voice said you can only brief or do public speaking in front of groups of 8 or 10. If it's anything above 8 or 10, you would fail. So I would psych myself out because I told myself that I can only speak in front of small groups. But here's the thing I learned. I knew my subject matter well. So I had to
Mm.
train my mind to understand that if you prepare, that's the key thing when you're doing public speaking. Preparation. It doesn't matter if it's one person in the room or 400. If the preparation is done, the work is already done. All you have to do is get up there and do your thing. So once I started to train my mind to teach myself that the work is done, I prepped, I know my subject matter, and I'm gonna get up there and kill this presentation. So I tell folks, self-affirmations are key, right? It's nothing wrong with bigging yourself up, hyping yourself up, pouring into yourself. You shouldn't need anybody else to always pour into you. We as human beings have to learn to really self-love, pour into ourselves. So I went from speaking in front of groups of eight to 10 to groups of hundreds. And as a person who stuttered, to get up there and to have folks say, man, you are the most confident stuttering person I've ever seen in my life. Folks who don't stutter say, I don't even stutter and I can't do what you just did. How you
Mhm.
get up there, how you work a room, the charisma you exude. People tell me it's just inspiring. People say, how did you get there? And we already discussed it. You have to believe in yourself. I said once I started to believe in myself, because again, the preparation was done. So now you have to get up there and execute and not focus on how many people are in a room. Focus on your subject matter and everything else will be fine.
Oh my goodness, Devon, you are preaching what I teach. Preparation is everything. It frees you from feeling like insecure, inadequate. Frees
Yep,
you from all
absolutely.
of that. And then
Absolutely.
if you want to get spiritual, your prayer time also will free you as well if you don't have the preparation time. Love
Absolutely.
that. Okay, I gotta see you in action. I gotta see this charisma, large rooms. Devon went from 8 to 10 to hundreds.
Yeah,
This is
yeah,
incredible.
yeah.
Man, if you are not inspired just by listening to Devon's story, I don't know what to tell you. Okay, Devon, what's next for you? You've written a book, you're speaking at conferences, you're growing the confidence of your son. Love that story, by the way. What's next for you?
Next for me is just to keep on trying to inspire folks. I told myself in 2025, anytime I have an opportunity, doesn't matter if it's to speak in front of one person or a few hundred folks, I will not turn it. I will not turn it down. And it's just not to promote my book. Like I said, I have a book out, but it's not. The book is just a piece of the story. I think it's important for me to inspire as many people as I can because folks like you inspire me. You being online, sharing your clips about being confident, overcoming things. I just think my story has to be told to inspire folks. Because again, I'm a person who stutters. So I'm not only inspiring folks who stutter, I'm inspiring people who don't stutter to just be you, man. Once we learn how to just be us, because I told myself, I said, I am 40 years old. I said, I am not worrying about the small things anymore. In my book, I really go into changing your mindset. I have a saying, mindset matters, right? And I know I've said mindset a few times in this interview, but it's just important for us as human beings to change our mindset. So my goal is to inspire as many folks as I can. So I'm going out to the NSA, that stands for the National Stuttering Association. I've been asked to come speak at the conference in July, and I'm honored to go speak there because I went to my first National Stuttering Association conference in 2023, and it changed my life. Me
Mm.
going from being a child, feeling alone, not talking about stuttering, not meeting anybody who stutters until I was an adult, being at that conference, being around 500 people who started from different walks of life, that experience is something I will never forget. So I'm honored to go back this time and to not just spectate and to just be in workshops and speaking, but to actually be able to speak there and share. I am thrilled to do that.
Oh my gosh. You know, you are living what I am hoping to pull out of people. There are a lot of people who, like you said, they may not stutter, but there's some other limiting self belief that they've held on to that is limiting what God wants to show them and use them and how He wants to use them. I just celebrate. I celebrate your courage, your
Thank you.
tenacity,
Thank you.
the
Thank you.
willingness to sit down and write it, your vulnerability. Celebrating that. And I'm excited to hear how your son, the oldest one, how he takes what he sees in you and also is empowered to speak up and use his voice.
Yeah.
So good. Okay, rapid fire questions, 3 questions, and then we'll let you go.
Okay.
What's your go to hype song before you speak?
I'm a Drake. I'm a Drake fan, so I got a Drake playlist, and I know some people say, "Well, Drake is kind of R&B, but Drake has some fire rap songs." So I love to uh, hit up my Drake. But and also, I'm a Washingtonian, so I go to Backyard Band. I love me some Backyard Band. So between Drake, then if I want to really get hyped, the Backyard Band.
Okay, we on the same
Go
accord.
band.
Those that I'm we speaking the same language. What's one book that has changed your life?
A book I read a few years ago that kind of inspired me was the Will Smith memoir. It was self-titled, Will, and it was an amazing book, amazing read, and just to hear his story and just the gems he was dropping in that book. That was an amazing book. That's the first book that come to my mind because again, my book is a memoir, motivational self-help book, and his book was kind of in that same lane, and that book was
Hmm.
just amazing, him telling his story but dropping so many gems throughout the process. That book was amazing.
Yeah, it's that book is incredible. I echo
Incredible.
that. And the audiobook, I don't know if you listened to it or if you read
I
it,
listened
but
to
the
it. He did an awesome
yeah,
job, and the
amazing.
music that he introduced, the rap, oh my god, yeah, it was crazy. Audio book was crazy.
Top
Yeah.
tier. Top
Yeah.
tier. Okay,
Yeah.
last question. What's one word that you would use to describe your voice today?
I would say courageous. I would say my voice is now courageous, and I think that emulates everything in one because again, my voice was silent for years, and to now be courageous and loud. I know you said one word, but I'm gonna say courageous and loud because I speak so loudly and proudly
Mhm.
now. And again, I'm being honest, you couldn't get 3 words out of me back in the day because I wanted to avoid speaking because I was so insecure about my stuttering. So courageous and loud are, I know you said one, but those are 2 words that I think would describe my voice now.
Awesome. It was a pleasure to have you, Devon. Super inspired. I'm inspired by your story, and it empowers me to keep going. There are other people who want to be liberated and hopefully are inspired by our content. Any final remarks you'd like to leave? How do people find you? Where do they buy the book? Let us know.
Yeah, so the book, like I said, I have a book called Stuttering to the Top. You can find this book on Amazon.com, and you can also find it on my website, DavonCamp.com. That's DavonCamp.com. And you can follow me on Facebook, Davon Camp, and you can follow me on Instagram, DC Davon, DCDAVON. So I'm trying to tell you all, go out and get this book. This book is incredible. It is inspiring and it will change your life. And the reviews on Amazon are incredible. So please go check this book out.
Awesome. Well, it's a pleasure to have Devon on today's podcast. I was at a wedding 2 weeks ago and I was sitting next to a mental health therapist and they said, "Did you read Devon's book?" And I was like, "I haven't read it." "You gotta read it. You have to read it." So I have to add it to my list of things to get through before summer kicks off. I want to shout out Devon and also those of you who are watching who are saying to yourself, "You know what? I've been sleeping on my capacity to use my voice. And there's depth to me that needs to be released, whether that's through me talking, speaking, training, empowering, teaching, or preaching. And I'm ready to do that." I tell you one thing that I'd like to recommend is that you take a public speaking class. That is I have so many testimonies similar to Davon. They didn't write books, but they launched nonprofits, or they spoke up at the governor's event, or they did a pitch competition, or they're doing more video content online. I have so many testimonies of people who have taken a public speaking class and that has improved their level of confidence. If that is you, I would love to have you in our upcoming class. It is virtual, so if you're watching from anywhere in the world, you can join us on Friday, May 2nd. The information is at vocalvalue.com/PS. In the interim, I want you to go follow Davon and keep up with his story, because it's through seeing and hearing things repeatedly that they begin to download into, our hearts and minds. You got to see people who are doing the thing that inspires you. You got to see and hear it repeatedly, and hopefully that encourages you. I'm excited that you came and dropped by to listen and spend some time with us. I'll see you next Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. I love you. There's absolutely nothing you could do about it.